Thank you for coming out this morning. I haven't quite seen anything like that since the last time I attended an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but you all did very well. I think we want to keep this quite light and not get into too much depth. It's too early in the morning in Miami, and my hangover's still functioning quite well. But I want to introduce you to Dago. Unfortunately, his partner, as Eric said, his partner in crime, Marco, can't be with us. Marco did not get a visa from the State Department to visit America, which is a condition we often find Cuban artists being subject to, which is rather unfortunate because everywhere else in the world they're able to travel and they're welcomed with open arms. And on many occasions it's difficult for these guys to come to America, which seems rather archaic and retrograde, so it's a great shame Marco isn't with us today. But Dago's going to acquit both of them very well. We're going to talk a little bit about their process. For those of you that don't know, Los Carpinteros started out as three guys who were trained at art school in Havana. So it's a collective, it's known as Los Carpinteros. They started working together at art school. They've been working ever since. One of the trio of artists, Alex Arachea, left. I like to now refer to him as the Lost Carpinteros. So there's two left, there's Marco and Dago, and they've worked together for 2 decades. It's a very unusual form and way of working because most artists don't work collaboratively, either with each other or on many occasions with other artists and other institutions that well. Los Carpinteros singularly do. Their practice includes working in communities, working with architecture, working with many different forms in different contexts socially. And it's a very important aspect of their work that the work has a very strong undertow of a political undertow, but with a small p. It's not something that they beat you over the head with, but there is always a very important social and political undertow to the work. So hopefully we'll get into that a little bit with Dago. They have built here in Miami this fantastic work called the Guiro, which Dago can describe better than I can, which is on the beach. It's going to be there until the end of the fair, sponsored by Absolute Art Bureau, who've done an amazing job with it. It's called the Guiro, which is based on the musical instrument, which is a slang term in Cuban for party. And let me tell you, that's what the place is being used for. And we also have a number of works on our booth at the fair, which have been attracting a great deal of attention, including, you may have seen a red sculpture based on communist monument in a former communist enclave. These objects were built as sort of symbols it was described as symbols of the future, but they were more like to be symbols of repression. There are certain forms of these objects in Cuba as well, so it's something that Los Carpinteros knew very well. And they chose to appropriate the image of the piece and reimagine it built out of Lego, and sort of twist the whole message of the sculpture around so it becomes an object of play and an object of amusement, but again with a very strong political undertow. So Dago, can you talk about how you guys, the three of you, met at Art College, and why did you start working as a collaborative team? Why not just work as individual artists?
First of all, wow, this is loud. Thank you for coming, and we get together at school, at the art school. We in Cuba we have the educational art program is huge. You start since you are a child, and we met at the school for one class exercise. The class exercise was based in a Jorge Luis Borges poem. That the idea was to interpret what the other person think and to translate it into the artistic language or something like that. And we make a couple of pieces and we have so much ideas that we couldn't make it, that we still doing this until today. And another thing about working as a collective is that no, the people think that the artists work 100% alone, but we don't think it, we don't see it like that. Everybody works together with somebody. We see it like this is visual artists. I think that you have to share, you have to participate, you need to get involved people, and that, we see it like that, you know.
Yeah, but you know, it's very unusual for artists to be that open to the collaborative process because, you know, as we all know, a lot of artists have very large egos, and that's part of the program in a certain way. I mean, a lot of very famous artists have very strong egos. So how do you guys manage to keep that in check and work alongside each other without it becoming difficult for you or your egos getting in the way, and you continue to reinvent your process and work collaboratively in a very, in a very familial setting? I mean, you guys have worked for 2 decades now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see it so complicated. We have a big egos also, but we have a we have a rotative presidential periods, so we can share the.
So when you're making drawings, if both of you are making the drawing, do you have like 3 months when you do the detail and he does the background and he, and then you switch?
So, yeah, no, depends on the season. We have a season of creativities, and I think this to work as a collective, that you have to keep in mind one thing is that you have to respect a lot the other, and we try to do. Sometimes we couldn't get it, but we try to do this as much as possible. It's about respect. It's something about that.
So was the invitation, I mean, we've shown your work here in Miami for many, many years. Was the invitation to make the Guiro project with Absolute, was that a difficult decision to make for you? Because everybody knows that it's a very contentious and hot topic, the Cuban artists in Miami and the Cuban presence here. I mean, was it ever a question as to whether you felt you could do this and step into this arena and make a contribution, or what were your thoughts on that topic?
When we start, this piece is not a collaboration only between us. There is another entity collaborating with us to make this piece happen. This is Absolute Art Bureau. They went into the studio and they saw some previous work that we used to make in this end, this shape, and they like it. But at the beginning, we were just thinking to make like 2 drinks or something very, not a physical intervention in the space or something like that. We were trying to make something more simple, no? And then they say, okay, let's do something big, and we put everything together. I don't know, I lost what I was thinking about.
But I mean, it's a little atypical for your practice. Most of the time, you're working in the studio, you're on the road, you guys travel a lot, you're working in museums all over the world, you're making exhibitions all over the world. You're going to be making an exhibition in May in New York, you're going to be making an exhibition in Hong Kong in the fall. The work is being seen all over the world. It's quite unusual to make an intervention which is really a piece of social architecture that can be used.
Mm-hmm, yeah. One thing I can tell you about it, we keep the whole day talking. This is a practice that happened talking, only talking, 100% talking, and those talks. The idea come from those talks in form of drawings, because the process includes drawings to present the ideas every one of us have, and that's it. I don't know.
It's interesting you mentioned talking, because once when we were in the studio, I was asking about the drawings, and I said, because when you go into the studio and you look at their practice, and you see drawings up on the wall being worked on, and I asked them very specifically, which one of you does the drawings, and they both looked at me like I was insane, which is probably quite reasonable, and they said, well, we all work on the drawings all the time. We step in and out of the drawings. They said, well, the drawings is really the way that we communicate. A lot of the time, the drawings are the point of communication. They're where the dialogue happens. So are the drawings occurring before the sculpture, at the same time as the sculpture, after the sculpture? What function do they have in terms of informing your process? Because drawing to you guys is very important.
Yeah, but they go indistinctly. No, I don't know if this is good, the word, but there is something that we cannot make in drawings also, and there is some sculpture that we don't want to become in drawings, and so we have different options with drawings, but definitely this is the drawings are our bank of idea. It's like to keep the blood coming to the team, and every time we have to choose something, we have a previous work, make us like something before. We don't bring a piece from nothing. No, we have this is like a bank. We can work like a bank.
Do you go back through, do you look back through work and revisit it and pick, say you can look at a drawing from 10 years ago and it'll spark another idea for a completely fresh body of work? Do you revisit your own work? Do you mine and dig into your own work?
Yeah, yeah. We go back. This is a thing that is going back and forth all the time. And that when you stop making one drawing, sometimes you are stopping in a line of works that you are stopping also. So sometimes we go back to see all those different how do you say ideas that have been stopped and at some point, and we want to still developing them. So it's like that. It's going back and forth. This is our practice.
How important is your relationship to, it's a stupid question because it's your culture, but I just want us to open this out a little bit. How important is your relationship to Havana and the specifics of Havana in terms of your practice?
After living 3 years in Madrid, I can tell you Havana we have been the whole life in Havana. I think it's very important. It's totally important. So we dedicate one part of the year, 1, 2, 3 months to go back to Havana to suffer a little bit, if you can call it in some way, no? And many, the 90% of the pieces that we have been developing the last 20 years have been inspired in Havana. In the last 3-4 years, we have been searching for another sources of inspiration, but Havana is still being like the main dish of this, no?
But in a very interesting way, because I've spent a lot of time with these guys in Havana and hung out with them. And what strikes me about it is, firstly, you have this really extraordinarily coherent group of artists, very well-trained artists who come through the system with a very strong formal training in Havana, and it continues. And really generations of really interesting artists coming through the system in Havana. But one of the things that's very particular about it is that a lot of them are dealing with the circumstances that they're in very head-on and making very politicized work, not necessarily political, but very politicized work, which, frankly, when it's that overt to me, I don't find particularly interesting. One of the things that's enormously attractive to me about your work, and that I find fascinating, is that it is not overt in its politicization, but there is a subtext, there is a commentary in the work. It's very carefully modulated. And of course, as Cuban artists who go out into the world, as Cuban artists who have a presence internationally, but also have a very strong presence at home, that's a very fine line to walk. You have to be, do you find that you have to be very careful in thinking about the kind of statements and the kind of, how much you're prepared to engage the work with that polemic?
We work with a long range of ambiguity in terms of politics, and but it's impossible to avoid the political issues in our work because we, especially coming from Cuba, probably the people know more about the war in Angola to how to lose weight or something like that, no? So this is a very charged, politically charged way of living there, and I think this attitude trespass the go to your work in somehow, and I think we didn't avoid very strong political issues. Actually, we have been touching some delicate issues during our career, and we have not been censored. Yeah.
And there's been, I mean, one of the interesting things is that there's no particular support from the regime for the work, but there's no pushback against it either. I mean, they really let you just made this extraordinary performance in May for the Havana Biennial, which was called Conga Irreversible, which was a performance that went through the center of Havana of an entire conga, which was played in reverse. The music was played in reverse. The dancing was done in reverse. It went through the city center. I mean, it could be perceived as a very overt commentary, and yet it was welcomed, and it was, you know, it was a fantastic party in the center of Havana.
Yeah, we were surprised for this.
It always does that when you say the word surprised.
Surprised. How this thing works. This piece was very advanced in political terms, and I think it was the first manifestation against the system authorized by the government, actually. But that was what we're talking about. It was a very politicized piece, yeah. And we get really surprised that I think they accept the challenge. They allowed us to do it, and it happens.
Well, I think it actually just proves that, you know, you can make any point you want in Havana as long as you're throwing a party. Right? So, you know, rather
we are not thinking about it.
Rather than dig into it too much more, we don't want you to all go to sleep on us. So I think what we'd like to do is we've given you a little bit of context for the work, and there's some images flashing up. We really wanted to open it up so that you can ask questions of Dago or myself and my relationship to working with these guys. So we're going to throw it open to the floor, and really, you guys, do not let me down. Somebody has to put their hand up, grab their mic, and ask a question, okay? Because otherwise, all that meeting and greeting, the AA thing earlier, was a waste of time. So come on, let's open it up.
It's the first step to your new life.
You got 2 questions immediately.
All right, there you go.
Hi. So obviously your work engages a lot of media that are not traditional art media, meaning social interaction at the limit. Is there, in your minds and as you're speaking and as your work develops over time, is there a line that you feel is the boundary of your work in terms of the medium, or do you feel that it's completely open to any kind of practice or any kind of medium? Do you understand my question? Or?
Yeah, a little bit. I will try to do as best as possible. No, we didn't reject any kind of media. Actually, we are starting to make some video pieces that for us was an issue several years ago. We were like a big discussion, Marco and I, if this was a valid language in our practice. But apparently, we have the ideas that we want to make, that we don't consider they are video art pieces, that we consider they are short films. And we are very enthusiastic that the first video will be shown at your gallery on May, in the show May, and we are trying to not to be like monks or working only in one kind of a style of things. We are trying as much as possible to open the range of our practice, no? And I don't know.
I guess you started with the question about egos and collaboration, and I think it's definitely a cultural difference with regards to the approach to collaborations. In my experience in parts of Asia, people are much more open and welcome to collaborating. And I think in the West, London, where I'm from, and in the US, there's that kind of approach that people might steal your ideas or they might take more credit. And what would you think would need to change or happen? And this is a question for both of you, in the West, to make that more open and more giving in that sense of collaboration?
From my point of view, originality is not it's not that important. The important is to, at the end, to the fact to make a big piece of art. This is what is matter here. So no matter the ways that you make it, no, and if to work in this end, if you have to sacrifice your ego, I think it's a valid idea. I don't know if it's.
I mean, I think it's a very complicated issue. I mean, there's a cultural issue to do with. I mean, I'm from Britain too, and I mean, it's it's a very small island in a very cold ocean where everybody's desperately trying to hang on to whatever little bit of it they can get. But that's, I think, their problem or my problem. Maybe it's your problem. I hope not. But strangely enough, it has produced quite a lot of very prominent collaborative artists: Gilbert and George, Jake and Dietmar Chapman, etc. But I think, it's a very interesting issue because, as Dago said earlier, all artists work collaboratively. Their studio practice, is not exclusive. Makin, who works with these guys, and they have other people working with them. They have people coming in and working on the projects with them. There's 5 or 6 people through the studio every day. It's a very collaborative process. When they work with people on projects around the world, it's very collaborative. That's historically what's always happened. What's quite unusual is to apply that process, which is quite ego-less in a certain way, to bring more talent to the table and make a better project, and at the same time have 2 artists working together where their egos are very important, because they're the figureheads of this particular ship, if you like. And so I think that's a very delicate balance, and it's quite rare. And it often falls apart. I mean, there are lots of historical precedents like Christo and Jean-Claude and Ilya and Emilia Kabakov and, Kienholz, and I've actually worked with almost all of them. But I think this, for me, somebody who's worked with nearly all of those people, these 2 guys, their collaborative process, not as partners, but as friends, which is also an important distinction, is quite unique.
You mentioned earlier that you always look to the past when you create new work, and you always reference things that you've done in the past. I wanted to ask how you go about that process, whether it's more of a subliminal thing where you just sit and reminisce on your past, or if you have a very highly organized way of archiving your work where you can actually physically reference through, like if you catalog your sketches and have folders, or if you just more spiritually do it.
Both. We have.
And if you do it technically, can you go into how you do it?
We have technically every single idea that come out of our mind. We register as a little drawing or as a maquette in 3D for a computer. We have a huge archive of the things that come out of our mind. So those are this is the first step to do a piece of art for us. To find a tema, no? How do you say tema? Theme to talk about it and to start as a point of start. But the process between this little cell to the final piece is a long process, and sometimes the results are totally different, no? This way to work is save our soul in some way, when you were talking about a spiritual thing, I think this is the only way to register our spiritual world, if you want to say it in some way, because it's like at the same time it's very autobiographic. It's like a blog. I mean, an internet blog that we keep. But this blog is secret, it's private, no? And I don't know.
So we have time for one more question, and then we can.
My question kind of goes with both of those questions about the collaboration and definitely like archive. If you and Marco see eye to eye on an idea or a project, is there a point that the mic is going in and out? Is there at some point that you may get it like, oh my gosh, that idea, and you go back, and then
Yeah, that's happen all the time. This is all about this. It's about going back and forth over some different issues that we have, and yeah, I think so. This happened. That's how it happened.
So let's take one more real quickly.
When you disagree, when do you disagree? What do you disagree most about?
We always disagree. Always. This work many times is being made from opposite positions. One of the things that make my partner so valuable for me is that Marco is so different than me that it's like, I don't know. We have this as a very valuable thing. I think he will probably think the same about me, no?
One of the fun things about watching these guys in the studio is you have a conversation with them, you ask them a question, they start dialoguing, and then they start arguing like an old married couple in front of you, and it goes from English straight into into Spanish, Cuban, really, and they start arguing like an old married couple, and then there's always this kind of eureka moment when you can tell the exchange is finished, and then one of them goes, and they turn back to English, and they've come up with another idea, but it was better than the thing that they had in the first place. And then they go, it's fantastic. And then they start talking in English to you again, and the ideas emerged. So actually, the fact that the two of them are doing this dialoguing, I think is incredibly important to the process. And you see it in the drawings. You see them communicating through the drawings. One leaves something almost overnight, the other one comes in the morning, starts working on the drawing again, and picks it up and changes something. And it really is this extraordinary kind of interior dialogue that they're having. It's like some sort of communication that you're not really privileged to take part in, but you can observe occasionally. It's really fun to watch, actually. You should ask Makin. She's in the studio with them all the time.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. I thank you. Yeah.